Hello. Lately in class we have been learning about water and the water cycle. Today we are going to expand on that concept just a little bit further by talking about transfers and reservoirs. Now if you take a look at the image that is currently displayed on the screen, this is the image that we are used to seeing when it comes to the water cycle. The water evaporates from the ground. It flows up into the clouds where it condensates and becomes part of the cloud. The cloud becomes heavy enough that gravity eventually enacts on that and it falls to the ground, becoming part of the rivers and streams, eventually flowing into a lake or the ocean where the process can take place all over again. Now, I said we're going to be talking about transfers and reservoirs. So let's begin by talking about transfers. If we read that definition there, a water transfer is any part of the water cycle where the water is moving. So it's not stationary at all. It's not in a standstill spot. If you want to think about different places that water is flowing, that beautiful waterfall there, for example. Let's give some other examples. On the very top of the screen, we have a river. That river, the water is moving. Because that water is moving, it's transferring from one place to another. That is a water transfer. Runoff. Now that particular runoff is just in a neighborhood, running off of a sidewalk into the gutter. In nature, that happens a little less obvious, so it's harder to get a picture of it, but I wanted to have some form of an example of runoff. Evaporation. You can see the evaporation there in the form of those clouds rising up off of the ocean. And then the final one is precipitation. These are all parts of the water cycle where the water is moving from one place to the next. If we were to look at that then in our original image here, let's grab with some red here. This evaporation is a water transfer. Over here, the precipitation is a water transfer. The snow runoff is a transfer. This groundwater flow is a transfer. We've also got the surface runoff. We've got these rivers here, stream flow as it calls it there. Some more evaporation taking place there. All of these places are where water is moving from one spot to another. And because that water is moving, it's what we would call a transfer. Now if we continue along to reservoirs, a reservoir is anywhere that water is stopped for any extended period of time. Hold on just one sec, excuse me. Sorry, I did not want to cough into the microphone. I am a little bit sick as I record this, so we're doing our best with it. A water reservoir is anywhere that water is stopped and holding for any extended period of time. So the water is stopped. If you look at that beautiful, serene picture of the lake, that water in that lake is not necessarily flowing anywhere. It's like a little bowl holding on to that water in that bowl. That is what we would call a reservoir. Now, I know we commonly hear things like here in Utah, you've got Pine View Reservoir or Strawberry Reservoir. And we refer to these as reservoirs. If we want to get technical, when we refer to something like that as a reservoir, we're generally speaking about a man-made reservoir. Although anywhere that water is stopped is considered to be a water reservoir. So some more examples. We've got the ocean there. Man, that's beautiful. I would love to live in that spot. The ocean is a reservoir. The lake is a reservoir. Things we don't normally think of. This big, gigantic, frozen chunk of ice. That's frozen water. That water is not moving. Or even up on top of that mountain in the background of it there. That water is not moving. those are what we would consider reservoirs because the water is stopped. Now, one more even bizarre example would be the cloud. This cloud right here, the water has evaporated, and through evaporation, that is a transfer. But once it condensates into that cloud, it's stopped. That water's not moving. Now, the cloud might be flowing from one place to the next, but the water as a whole is staying still within that cloud until gravity pulls it to the ground, in which case it then becomes a transfer again. But the cloud itself would be a reservoir where the water is not moving. So if we come back to our original example here, the ocean is a reservoir. It is holding that water still. The lake is a reservoir. It's holding that water still. These glaciers on top of the mountain there, they are a reservoir because they are holding that water in a still and steady spot. And again, the clouds up there are a reservoir because they're holding the water in that spot. So the transfers then, being anywhere that water moves, let's see, we'll do transfers with red. Remember, the transfers, anywhere water is moving, evaporation is a transfer. The precipitation is a transfer. The groundwater is a transfer. The rivers are a transfer. The runoff is a transfer. Now, anywhere that water is being held still, let's use green for this, the oceans are a reservoir. The clouds are a reservoir. The glaciers are a reservoir. The little ponds and streams are reservoirs. So again, simply stating it, if the water is moving, it is a transfer. If the water is being held in one spot for any given amount of time, that is a reservoir. Thanks for watching today's lesson, and be prepared for our activity that's to follow.